This is from the NAR website. I could have written this on ChatGPT and said, give me a press release that says we're not doing anything and are going to meet again into October. And I think that's what they did. So
There was a lot of words to get to the nothing sandwich.
if you're not getting educated about local and national real estate market trends, economic news, data, and industry information, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole here with 𝐌𝐨𝐬𝐚𝐢𝐤. And Lisa, we got what we wanted this week. We got the 50 basis point decrease from the Federal Reserve. There was some movement on the, I guess I call them the betting odds from the CME group very late before the meeting that looked like it was a 50-50 shot. Seemed like the market rejoiced. Let me read you a couple comments here, and then I want to get your reaction. So this was the first time in 4 years that the Federal Reserve enacted a rate cut, and it was 0.5 percentage point. Apparently, the decision was influenced by the softening in inflation, the slowdown in the labor market, as the inflation outlook was reduced from 2.3 to 2.3 from 2.6%, while the unemployment forecast increased from 4 to 4.4%. And the dot plot, if you don't know what the dot plot is, this is the voting members of the Federal Reserve. They predict what's going to happen next or what they think should happen next. And that suggests another 50 basis points in cuts by the end of the year. So I'm feeling good about this, Lisa. It's a change in economic policy. What's your reaction?
I think it's super positive. I think it's a great sign for things to come. I think the interesting thing for me, and I know you and I chatted about this a bit, was watching both agent and consumer thoughts on the fact that rates popped up a bit after the half point cut. So do you want to walk people through why that happened? Because I think that there's a lot of questions for people who don't follow the bond market and the economy itself really closely.
I'd love to. And that's exactly what we're here to do on Knowledge Brokers, because if you can't explain this or you don't understand it yourself, imagine what happens, Lisa, if you're at the table at a listing appointment. Hey, what does this rate cut mean for me? I had a listing appointment last night. We talked about it with one of the killer agents, Keir, on our team, and we ended it really well, very confident in how we're going to move forward with those folks. And then it came out at the listing appointment, hey, I was on the New York Stock Exchange floor for 20 years trading. So if you think, and this is someone that did not come across that way, didn't reveal himself prior to the appointment, despite pre-qualification, you got to know who you're talking to and how to explain it. And the comments we got were that he was pleasantly surprised how well we knew our stuff. So that's where this is important. So Housing Wire actually did a nice job on this. They explained yesterday, why did mortgage rates go up after the Fed rate cut? So, and this was a big shock to a lot of people. So, you have to look at a couple different things here. And if you're confused why rates went up, the bond market gets ahead of the Fed. That the market reacts in real time. And the bond market is really what sets mortgage rates. That's how they get priced. And this has been discussed for months on their platform. The labor market has been softer with the data that's come in since the end of 2023. And the Fed is only now worried about the risk to labor, even though we've seen kind of the writing on the wall here. And the Fed is usually behind the curve. That's historically documented. They tend to react later. And they need to play catch up on the market pricing. So as of yesterday, I don't know where the 10-year is today. Maybe you can look that up, Lisa. It's at 3.74% yesterday. And that's up from the lows on Wednesday and slightly higher from the close. So in order for rates to go lower, the mortgage spreads need to get better. So the spread between the 10-year and where 30-year fixed rates are coming in need to get improved, because right now it's a very wide spread. That's been something 𝐌𝐸𝐚𝐢𝐤𝐼's talked about a lot. Economic and labor data, they're getting softer. That we need to see that actually soften a little more for rates to come down. And the Fed getting more dovish, meaning they're more, there's hawkish and dovish, right? And that's really, dovish mean is like the willingness to do more to help the economy stay out of a recession. Right now, they've been very adamant. We got to keep rates high up until this last meeting. So those three things are what lead to mortgage rates. Now, the fact that the Fed made this basis point cut of 50 basis points or 0.5 point, that's good long term.
3.753 right now.
Okay, so we're in the same range. Very close. Thank you, Lisa. So the fact that, we long term, it's clear that I think, we're going to see maybe lower rates in the future. But a lot of mortgage companies have already priced in this anticipated rate cut because it wasn't a question of if they will cut the federal funds rate, it was how much. And there was, if
Yep.
you look at the CME Group's model, I love this model. And Bobby, I'll send you the link to this. Maybe we can put the chart up. They were going up and down where it was like a 30% chance that we would see a 50 basis point cut. Then it jumped up to 50. We did a radio show here on Tuesday, and it was basically like a 50-50 shot. So, the data came in and the Fed interpreted it. So what you've really got to look at if you want to understand what's going on with rates, and the easy solution here, Lisa, is talk to a local lender that you partner with and just get it from them. Like, don't try to interpret the 10-year and see what's going to happen. But the 10-year, well, I mean, look, some agents try to do that. And the reality is our job is to communicate it in a way consumers can understand. So maybe just a daily update from your lender would be a great strategy to put in your calendar. So hopefully that answers your question. Did I do a good enough job explaining that? Because this does get complicated. I want to get your take on this.
Yeah, no, I think you did a phenomenal job. I think the other thing to point out is if we think back to beginning of this year, if my memory is correct, I don't have all the data in front of me. We crossed 8 at one point in 2024, right? Or was it end of 2023? Do you remember?
It was
when
end
we
of 23.
8?
It was actually about 13 months ago. The month of October specifically is when we hit 8, and then
Okay.
it kind of came down to the high 7s. So, I mean, you're 2 percentage points lower right now, effectively, which is we'll get to
Right.
that in a second.
Without the Fed ever having cut the rate, right? Which is why it's super important that we remember that oftentimes these reductions have already been priced in with the movement that's happened over time. It's a long-term thing to get the rates to move down, and not, you said it perfectly, it's not tied at, like, in the immediate, right? So you might see that savings accounts or credit cards or other things adjust much quicker than you're ever going to see mortgage rates adjust.
I agree with that. And if you look at what happened in the month of August after Jerome Powell came out from their luxurious retreat in Jackson Hole and said the time has come to adjust policy, the market reacted more to that than anything else because they knew it was coming.
Yep.
And the
Correct.
Federal Reserve is very calculated with their comments for a reason because it does influence the market. Whether you agree
Yep.
with their policy or not, when you hear from them, something's going to happen. Whether the market goes up or down, there's going to be a reaction. So but the thing here is that, like, this is a new era of economic policy, and that we're going to see. I mean, if we're going to see more rate cuts coming, and the dot plot is the key indicator because that's the people that actually make these decisions. That's their anticipation. There's a lot of good things to be talking about with sellers, buyers, potential customers in real estate right now, which I know you want to get into. I certainly want to get into as well. You got to communicate the right information because if you think and you don't know how this works and you say the wrong thing to somebody, that may be the end of your business relationship with them because they don't think you know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Deep knowledge matters right now.
100%, especially if you promise that, if the Fed cuts the rate, mortgage rates will go down, and you've got somebody who was banking on another decrease or a correlation between the decrease, it could spell trouble. So I think interesting thing, my next question to you is going to be, once that happened, I know you, Byron, and I kind of chatted about this morning. What
Mm-hmm.
did you see in your market in terms of buyer activity?
So it's probably too early to tell on actual buyer activity, meaning like pending sales and things. So but
Yep.
what I did see was that activity on our website jumped up dramatically. And we
Okay.
saw people like searching for homes again. The conversations, I mean, for someone that's in the trenches every day, I think I made, I don't know, 130, 140 phone calls yesterday. There was a little relief. And I feel like consumers are just glad this is moving in another direction because if you look at what's happening right now, I think a lot of folks are stressed about the cost of goods. And I think that
Hmm.
there's a lot of people that are, they feel like everything is just so much more expensive right now. And this has been a big issue for a while with inflation. So the fact that the policy is going the other way, it's not just talk about it or we need to do things. It's actual policy that's going to affect that. I mean, you talk about credit card rates, right? That has a direct effect on the U.S. consumer. So there's a sigh of relief, I think, in a little bit because a lot of people thought the Fed should have done something in July. They didn't. So the from being on the ground, the anecdotal evidence is that I think, and there's been a lot of people that said I want to wait to see what the Fed does in the fall before I even think about doing something. And so
Yeah.
we did see buyer activity jump up on our site. I mean, I think a better measure will be next week after we have a weekend to kind of go through this and see what happens in terms of like sales and that sort of stuff. I mean, it's a little too early to tell because with listings that launch, and I mean, you know how this business is, that, you know, we see the sales activity really kind of is like Monday, Tuesday is a good day to take inventory
Fair.
because that's when,
Yep.
you know, a lot of the new listings hit the market.
Yeah, and when offer deadlines come up in those
For
multiple
sure.
offer
Yeah,
markets
that's
and that
exactly my
kind of
point.
stuff. Yep. So we saw pretty similar stuff. It's been, and I know you and I have also spoken about that this past month has felt a little bit sluggish.
A little
As
bit. I would call it dog shit. I mean, that's what I would call this month so far. And I'm hoping this will open it up. Keep going.
Yeah, so I was going to say just that I think that the interesting thing will be to see whether the traffic on the websites and the traffic out viewing homes correlates to offers, or if what it does is correlate to people who are maybe starting to kind of express some interest, but say, wait a minute, I think I want to wait, because the news was also, if I don't remember which article I was reading, but for another half a point a cut this year, I think it was, I'll have to pull it up while you chat next, but then a full point cut next year and
Mm-hmm.
another potential half a point in 2026. And so I think it'll be interesting to see whether that information kind of pops people into thinking, maybe I should wait for one more cycle of cuts. Is that going to have impact on rates? The other interesting thing, and I think you alluded to it this morning, is we've found our activity from sellers has actually been really, really high in the past week. We've booked more listing appointments this week than we have in the entire month before this point. So in the first 2.5 weeks of the month, booked some good listing appointments, but this week alone, we booked more appointments this week than the other weeks combined. And a lot of those conversations with sellers were tied to thinking that this was going to create a late fall opportunity.
Yeah, there's definitely signs of that. And I want to actually get into one of the questions here from the press conference because it talks about the housing market specifically. There was more housing talk in these comments than we've seen for a lot of the meetings that have happened. So there was a question that was raised to Jerome Powell. Some of your colleagues have expressed concern that with starting to cut rates, you could reignite demand in housing and see prices go up even more. What's the likelihood of that? How would you react to that? I want to get your reaction to these comments, Lisa. So Jerome Powell said, the housing market, it's hard to game out. In part, frozen because of lock-in with low rates. People don't want to sell their home because they have a very low mortgage and it would be quite expensive to refinance. As rates come down, people will start to move more, and that's probably beginning to happen already. But remember, when that happens, you've got a seller, but you've also got a new buyer in many cases. So it's not obvious how much additional demand that would make. And the real issue with housing is that we have had and are on track to continue to have not enough housing. So
Yep.
it's going to be challenging. It's hard to zone lots that are in places where people want to live. That's a big issue we've talked about at length. It's all
Yep.
aspects of housing are more and more difficult. And where are we going to get the supply? And this is not something that the Fed can really fix. But I think as we normalize rates, you'll see the housing market normalize. And ultimately, by getting inflation broadly down and getting those rates normalized and getting the housing cycle normalized, that's the best thing we can do for householders. I didn't know that was a word. And then the supply question will have to be dealt with by the market and also by the government. So I think he's got some good points there that even as affordability improves, you're going to see some sellers that, and here's the sellers that are the ones making the moves right now. I want to be really clear. They've been the ones holding out, monitoring the market, and they've got a life change happening that they've got to address. Home's too big, getting relocated, kids are out of the house. Like these are the people that have been holding out. It's a lot of downside sellers and where or they want to get somewhere where it's closer to their family. We've seen a lot of that where their kids have moved somewhere
Yep.
and their grandparents. So that's been a lot of the sellers that we've been talking about. I mean, I look at listings that we've taken just this week. One's a trustee situation. One is an investor looking to liquidate that doesn't want to be a landlord anymore. I've got another group of folks that we're talking to later today that they want to get closer to their kids. The folks we met with last night, they're downsizing as well. So that's kind of the MO, because the upsizers, they've already been looking because they want to find that right home they're going to be in long term. These I'm pretty clear, this group, this like downsizing baby boomer group, they've been the ones kind of monitoring this, and it's still going to be a slow it's going to be a slow process for them as a whole coming to the market because there was, I mean, there was some information about baby boomers in general. They like some of them plan to never sell, like they're never going to move, right? And they just have a different view of housing. So I do agree with you. There's more seller activity, but it's people that probably would have moved a couple of years ago if their rates weren't so low or they weren't in such a good financial position. And now they're just at a point where it's like, I better do it before something bad happens.
Yep. I think that was definitely part of it. I think the other interesting one that we've seen, and some of it has been boomers by virtue of the trend here, but we're seeing a lot of folks from the north who are starting to think about moving south into areas where there's an increase of inventory, which makes it easier to
Florida.
coordinate the buy sell. Exactly. And from Massachusetts, that's a big part of what we deal with is folks
Same
moving
here.
to Florida. And so even younger folks who have said, you know, there's an opportunity for us to be able to kind of right size our bills, if you will, and capitalize on the equity that we have here. And the reason that they didn't do it earlier was because it was such a competitive market down there that they couldn't buy with the home sale contingency. And now they're seeing that that opportunity is really going to exist and that they've got a lot more buying power and negotiating power in those markets that have softened a little bit more than they have up here in the north.
Yeah, and I would kind of actually that's kind of the same group people moving to Florida. I mean, it's still like a downsize
Yep.
move, and that's what's going to happen here. Some of them are going to be okay with it, but I've got some. I know some people personally that are just like, hey, we're not going anywhere, and you think they'd be downsized candidates. So that's going to be something very real. So I do agree with those comments there. He also asked. There was a follow up question to this from Elizabeth Scholes at ABC News. And it was mortgage questions have already been dropping in anticipation of the announcement. How much more should borrowers expect? And he said, very hard for me to say. I rarely speak on rates. It'll depend on how the economy evolves. So I think you got to be careful as an agent. And we can go into these comments here, but this is going to lead me to something we talked about prior to the show, that you got to be careful as an agent knowing what to say to these people. I talked to our buddy DJ Della Sala down in Florida, and he put something out there, and I just ripped it off and posted it on Instagram. I thought it was so good, and it basically says that posting about this or just telling people the Fed cut rates is not going to help your business. You've got to pick up the phone and control your destiny. And there was a great reaction to it, and mainly because most consumers do not know what this means. And if you can't articulate it, like think about some of the people you're working with, Lisa. Are all of them that savvy on what this means and the direction of mortgage rates? Because there's a lot of confusion in the market right now. And so what advice are you giving to the people you work with, your team? I know what advice I have, but you can't just like send out a blast email and see what happens. There's got to be some hand-to-hand combat or finger to telephone combat to actually like talk through this with folks.
100%. So it's very much that, and that I think that the advice that we give is very personalized to each person's unique situation. I'm going to actually make a tie-in to something else that I've been super passionate about, which is that it's time to move on from all of the discussion and the distraction of Burnett Sitzer and get back to the business of
amen.
Yep, of selling houses, connecting with consumers, and understanding. One of my biggest pet peeves, Tom, was during the run-up of rates when everybody was saying marry the house and date the rate.
Ugh.
And that was really bad advice. And so I'm going, really in depth with our agents about the risks of having similar messaging and not being totally transparent with consumers, that there is some opportunity right now. It's balancing that as rates go down, we all know that pricing in our markets, and it's not going to be true for all markets, but in our markets, we're going to see prices go up a little bit. There's definitely an opportunity that can be had for the buyers that are ready, willing, and able to take advantage of. But I don't think it's something where we should be pushing consumers to make a decision with a fear-based mindset. But to your point, it's not social media posting. It's not like creating like videos again that go back to the social media aspect of things, and that it's got to be super personalized to each consumer and helping them, once we understand their goals, helping them come up with a long-term strategy that's going to help them get there.
Yeah, and it's simple things like knowing what to say. I think that's we talk about this all the time. The biggest gap for real estate agents is they get in a
Hmm.
situation where there's like the opportunity to do some business and they don't know what to say. And we talked about this morning on our accountability call where, it's scripting number one, but it's also understanding what this actually means and communicating it. So we developed an
Hmm.
OFQ. We talk about this all the time, the opening, the fact, the question. So, hey, it's Tom here with Remax. I'm following up as promised. Not sure if you saw the Fed adjusted the federal funds rate yesterday, and probably more importantly, last week we saw the lowest interest rate since February of 2023 for mortgages. And I
Yep.
was just curious, how would these changes impact your plans over the next 6 to 12 months? And just stop talking, because what you're doing there is you're giving them some information. One, about how it
Yep.
affects them with mortgage rates. Two, about the change in policy. And three, it's not, are you ready to buy or sell right now? It's, hey, how can I help you over the next 12 months? You think about that
Long-term
approach,
plan. Yep.
long-term plan, right? This is a big decision for a lot of people. And then you go through and just talk to them about it. But you've got to be asking the right questions. And what I would do, I've got a different take on this, because I think the social media stuff is valuable, followed with one-to-one follow-up. Like, that's the miss. Everyone thinks like, I'm going to post this. I'm
Yes,
going to,
I
I'm going
agree.
to, I'm going to get the
Yes.
come list me call, right? I like the video. I like the social media post. I also like an email, and an email that goes out to the folks that have been in like your nurtures or your unresponsives, or the folks you just can't get a hold of, your qualifies, or like you spoke to them, but you don't really know what's going on. And I want to give a lot of credit to Jimmy Mackin. I don't know if you
I
saw
was
this.
just going to pull up that one. Yes, I legit just pulled it up.
So we're using it right now. We already operationalized this, and we sent it out in a couple batches. I want to tell you what the results are. So Jimmy Mackin put this email together. It's really, really good. He also wore a suit on stage at the Tom Ferry Summit, which, like, he won me over. I'm like, thank God professionalism is still here. But this email template, and it's something that the subject line is, the 1,650-day wait is over. That would get my
Yep.
attention. So and Jimmy knows his stuff. It's been 1,650 days since the Federal Reserve last cut interest rates. During the era of rising rates, we've seen mortgage rates peak, existing home sales plummet, home affordability hit a 40-year low. So when we got this news yesterday, we were elated. And then he goes on to talk about, like, more homes could be hitting the market. It could, and because of a bank rate survey, only 5% of people feel comfortable selling their homes at a 6% rate or higher. There's a glimmer of hope. 35% would consider selling if it's lower. So all you're giving information, right? This is the Gary
Yep.
Vaynerchuk jab, jab, jab. And there's no ask for this until the PS. I love his PSs. They actually are very good here. Sounded very weird. And he gives a case study there, right? So we actually gamed this out, and we found an actual case study of some folks we just helped. So one of our clients wanted to sell their home, but they were afraid they wouldn't be able to find a new one. After preparing and marketing their home, we got them $62,500 above their desired sale price, and we helped them find a new home and move in less than 38 days. If you're
Yep.
feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just confused, call me directly for a professional guidance, and you put your phone number in there. So you send this out, Lisa, but then if you're using a good CRM, which hopefully you are, and it doesn't matter which one, and then you look at, okay, so we sent this out, and who's opening it? Who's clicking on it? And then you can go call those people first. And if you do that, you're going to generate some conversations that eventually will lead to some appointments and some sales in the long term.
Yes. So we took that and we tied it in with Fellow, and we've been tracking the opens with the visits to home values on the Fellow dashboard. Are you using Fellow?
I'm going to actually email Fellow and say, hey, do for me what you did for Lisa right now. I'm going to have to talk to you after this, because we sent it out to, like, we got ponds in our CRM and all sorts of stuff. So far we've sent 13,000 of these out, and we
Yep.
have 4,084 opens. That's a 22% open rate,
That's bananas.
317 clicks, 16 replies, 118 unsubscribes. That's normal. But the 22% open rate and a 1% click rate, I'll take that all day, because now you've taken 13,000 leads and you've got a
Yep.
narrower bucket that you can go reach out to and see who's serious about transacting. That's how you take this information and play chess, not checkers, because you're giving information, but then you're doing the one-to-one follow-up to start a conversation.
100%. Yep. Spot on. Spot on.
I'm like, great minds here, Lisa. We didn't even talk about that. So that's tremendous.
All right.
So
What do we
you're
have next on our list?
I want to get back to one thing. You said you're sick of
Okay.
Sitzer Burnett. Tell
Dude,
me
I'm
more
over
about
it.
that and why. I want to hear all your feelings on this because we're getting into a critical time of year, right? We're
Hmm.
10 days away from the fourth quarter. We call that separation season. Tell me more about this.
I just think, I mean, it has been since what was the date in March? I don't remember the exact date in March, but I feel like from that fateful day in March when the announcement first came out to August 17th, it was all that it was it was at the center of everybody's thoughts. What is the impact going to be? What do I need to do to prepare? How do I pivot? Am I going to have a business on September 17th, right? And so I feel like now that we're 30 days past it across the country, I don't know about you, but I almost feel like it was a non-issue for 90% of real estate agents. Agree?
I would say that the agents that actually paid attention to this before the middle of July, it's been a
Yep.
non-issue. And the folks that have said I don't want to sign a touring agreement or a contract or whatever you're doing in your state, and
Yep.
I don't want to get into that. There's two things about those people. There's two reasons they're not signing it. One is you didn't do a good enough job explaining what's going on. I always look at
Yep.
myself in the mirror. I have the meeting with myself. The second reason is actually there's three reasons. The second reason is they got an agent and they didn't want to tell you about it. And
Yep.
let's be real. And the third is they're maybe not that serious and don't want to get locked in. So
Yep.
you can
Fair.
fix number one. Number two, you're saving yourself some time. And number three, that's a follow up opportunity. So I look at it as it's actually an easier way to balance your client list instead of becoming a tour guide and a door opener, which a lot of agents have made a career out of that and just hoping they like the house instead of actually winning their business. So we haven't had as many issues as people think. And the people that do have issues, they don't follow the process that we've tested with the scripting, the
Yep.
pre-appointment steps. And we can see it on our team and it's fun. They're like, oh, this person wouldn't sign. I said, okay, let's go into CRM and inspect it. I don't see a pre-appointment email. I don't see a video. And it looks like you were texting them the details about this contract. So that's why it didn't work out. Are you seeing anything different?
No, same stuff all the time. Same stuff all the time. So my point is non-issue at this point. We've all adapted. We all know what's going to shake out. It the news came out that there was that the attorneys asked for some amount of money, and my response was, why do I care? It's not my money. It's not impacting my business. And if I give it any headspace, or if anybody gives it any headspace, it's just taking away headspace, time, attention, focus to do the things that are going to help all of us continue to earn money in the next 30, 60, 90, 120, 180 days. And it's not going away. We're not going to change it. Why does anybody really care about that part of it anymore?
You know why they care? Because they don't want to get in the trenches and do the work that it takes to help people buy and sell real estate. And they like to bitch and complain. And
Well,
that's
I'm
not the
done
kind
with
of
it.
people I want to associate with. That's why we're
Yep.
friends, Lisa, because you said I'm done with it. We actually squashed this, and that's all we're talking about. That's it. We're done.
Done. Move on.
All right. So we did have some. I want to do a little bit of a follow up story because we talked about clear cooperation last week. And this to me is an issue in the business right now because we're being basically told how we have to market listings and how sellers have to market listings. So NAR, in their typical fashion, have some closed door meeting last week when we were filming the pod. It was the MLS Technology and Emerging Issues Advisory Board. They met and it wrapped up on Friday. So what do you think the outcome was from this meeting, Lisa? I know that Byron had a source that like 80 brokerages band together with Robert Reffkin from Compass to basically say this is not a great policy. Robert Reffkin had an opinion piece drop on Inman we're going to talk about here in a second. But what do you think happened at the meeting?
Nothing.
Wow. Shocking news. NAR, again, does
Nothing.
absolutely nothing. And so, here's what happened. They said they're going to reconvene in October to consider the rule further. This is from the NAR website. I could have written this on ChatGPT and said, give me a press release that says we're not doing anything and are going to meet again into October. And I think that's what they did. So
It was a lot of words to get to the nothing sandwich.
this could have been a tweet. Could have been a lot faster, right? So nothing happens in NAR. But then Robert Reffkin came out and say what you want about every different company that's out there. Robert Reffkin, he's taken the lead on this. I think there is some leadership there that he's pushing this. And so what he said in the article was Basically, under this policy, anytime a homeowner wants to market their off MLS for more than one day, realtors are forced to compromise both the ethical foundations upon which their profession is built and their obligations under state laws governing policy and fiduciary duty. And he goes on to say there's some ethics violations in here. He points to Article 1, protecting
Yep.
clients' interest. So if you don't know what Article 1 says, and I would imagine most real estate agents don't know what this says, so I'll read it. When representing a buyer, seller, landlord, tenant, or other client as an agent, realtors pledge themselves to protect and promote the interests of their client. And he identifies a conflict here that because this policy forces agents to comply with MLS mandated rules, even when the conflict with the first sentence of the first article of the Code of Ethics, it can require agents to act against their client's best interests. And he goes on to say about this. He also talks about Article 3, cooperation with other brokers. And realtors shall cooperate with other brokers except when cooperation is not in the client's best interest. I agree with him on this, that I think it's about giving people options, right? I mean, would you rather have all the agents bringing their buyers, or just the agents from your company bringing the buyers? And, where it gets funny is, like, you're an independent brokerage, right? We're a franchise. Yep. So it's very similar where, there's a lot of RE/MAX offices. We've got our franchise, which is the brokerage. So it's not all the RE/MAX offices in the state. It's just ours. You're in a similar boat. You probably got the same amount of people in total as all with our single agents and team agents. You've got, your team as well. We're a little over 100. But then you get a company like, let's take Robert Reffkin at Compass. That's a corporate brokerage. So their offices all fall under the same umbrella. So he's right. I think that's a very good point here, that there's a conflict in Section 2. And then he talks about client confidentiality in Standard of Practice 1.9, which is a big part of this rule. So what do you think about this argument from Reffkin? I mean, I see it as being pretty well thought out.
I agree with it. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I've paid a fine for a violation of a clear
We've
cooperation.
been threatened with fines and had to go through the whole song and dance that we were doing everything right because some agent got annoyed at what we were doing following the rules. But yes, I'm right there with you.
Yeah, no, we paid a fine. I think last year or earlier this year, it went in front of the grievance committee or the ethics committee for New Hampshire in a very clear-cut case where we were acting in the best interest of a client who completed a purchase. The day before the purchase was completed, she received a corporate relocation where she was told she either needed to move to a new market or she didn't have a job. She, at that point, was out of contingencies for completing her purchase. But you and I both know, she completes a purchase today. We sell the house tomorrow. It hasn't appreciated any substantial amount of money, right? And so paying a traditional real estate commission was going to cost her a lot of money, right? She had already just paid closing costs, was never moved into the property and was never going to even move into it. And she said to us, if you can sell this for me so that I don't have to pay another agent, I need to sell it. And we tried posting it in some ways and got caught because we were posting it without putting it in the MLS, and I got fined. That wasn't in the client's best interest. She specifically asked not to put it in the MLS because it wasn't in her best interest to pay a full commission, and she understood that. She just wanted to break as close to even as possible. So I'm a huge proponent that there are cases where it's not in the seller's best interest. We should have the choice. The seller should have the choice. I don't know. I'm with Reffkin.
Yeah, this is a bad rule. I'm going to give you another instance where it's actually very interesting how this plays out. So we've got a listing launching today. It's showing start today. And our launch process is very intentional because as a listing agent, the worst thing you can do is just have the home pop up on the MLS and it's a big surprise, right? You want to have some ramp up and get people in there, especially when you think about kids' activities, availability for showings. Sometimes the fastest offer is not the best offer. So
correct.
Our launch process is documented and it works. It delivers a predictable result. So the Friday before, we list the home on coming soon on Zillow. And we do that for one business day to be totally compliant with this clear cooperation policy. Because just like you, people are they're like, oh, we can report the Tom Toole team. We can report Lisa Cincinnati. Let's do it. That happens, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we go coming soon on Friday, and then we put it in the MLS the following Monday as a coming soon listing. Not every MLS has this. Bright has this status. I know other states, it's like Doug has told me, Doug Edrington down in Tennessee, that's illegal to do there. So we start showings on a Friday, so everyone gets a fair shake at it. We want to get as much buyer interest as possible. We want competing offers for our sellers because that's in the best interest. And they sign off on this plan. There's no miscommunication there. Then I get agents that call, hey, can we get in early? So it's like, hey, you're asking me to break the rules and I'm going
Right.
to get fined. And like,
Yep.
I understand what you're doing here, but like agents just don't, they just want to get the house. So, and they don't have any liability as a buyer agent. It's all on the listing agent, right? Like what's going to happen to them? They got their client in early. So all this rule does, it creates a lot of like nonsense. And you want to talk about Sitzer Burnett. This is one of the reasons why the DOJ is targeting NAR. And I don't, and then you got people like, I know Byron had a really good point about Leo Pereira, the EXP CEO, who they don't want to cooperate on commission, but want everything transparent in the MLS. Like that doesn't make any sense. So
Right.
this rule just needs to go away. And I appreciate someone in the industry taking leadership on it. I know 𝐌𝐨𝐬𝐚𝐢𝐤𝐚 has been another one that's been pushing this, and he's in a much different market in LA. I actually appreciate his perspective because there's celebrities there. People like to go look at homes. There was actually an article I just saw about the Lions head coach, Dan Campbell, where he wants to move out of his neighborhood because people found out where he lived and he wasn't feeling safe. So,
Oh,
and, I mean, that's a head coach of an NFL football team. That's a big deal down here where we are. Detroit, it's the
yeah.
same way. Like, I mean, we have our celebrities are like local newscasters and sports figures. I don't know if you run into the same thing in Boston, Lisa, but it's like that's a great example of where that could not be in the best interest of somebody. And it's
Right.
really unfortunate. So the guy who reported that is actually a sports blogger I know in Philadelphia, but I mean, it's his name's Peter Sheffield. It's Sheffield Shuffler on Instagram. Big shout out there. But like, that's horrible that someone's feeling like they have to move out of their house because they found out where they lived. That's a great example of why this rule doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said in last week's podcast, I understand some of the underlying foundations, but I think when the seller owns the asset, they should have the deciding vote on how to handle it. And you and I both know 99.9% of consumers, the right thing will be to list an MLS. And the consumers are savvy enough to know that. So I don't think it's a huge risk of a seller getting taken advantage of by not knowing what the outcome is. So
For sure.
that's all I have on that.
All right. So before we wrap up here, so I always look at the fourth quarter as a time where you can finish strong. There's still a lot of business to be done between now and the end of the year. And we're right on the eve of that here. We're 10 days exactly from when we're filming this until the fourth quarter. In the spirit of let's all move on and focus on our businesses, which I would love. Like I feel like we have this conversation all the time. Like it's this business is just so simple if you know what to do.
Yep.
Talk about how you're setting up for a strong finish and an even better start to the year right now, because there's agents already walking around. I'm seeing this. They're like, oh, the market's a little sluggish. I don't know what's going on. It's because they didn't do any work over the summer. So what are you doing internally? Or if someone came to you and said, Lisa, give me some advice, give me some coaching, what are you doing to finish strong and set up a monster 2025 right now?
Oh, I love this. All right. So it was partly my 5 a.m. call. Actually, it's been little bits of parts of my 5 a.m. calls all week. So I'm saying strategic no's to a lot more stuff right now, and blocking out the time that's dedicated to business activities. And even though I always want people to like me and I want to make them happy and I want to do whatever I can to help, strategic no's to protect the time where I focus on the business. That's number one. Number two is I am super clear about my long-term goals. I've already set my goals for the end of next year. I know where we're going to move the business to by the end of 2025. And we've chunked it down into what do we need to do each quarter for the next 5 quarters in order to get there. So took our goal for next year, already aligned it. We also understand, as chunking those down, what do we need to accomplish before the end of this year to set ourselves up for success? Tom, every one of those numbers is up in visual around the office. The inside sales team knows exactly what they need to do to pull their weight to get us where we need to go. Our sales managers know exactly what they need to do in terms of training and coaching, sales production right now. Our marketing department has their numbers up and visual. How many emails do we need to send with what percentage of open rates? How many leads do we need to generate from all of our different lead sources? And it was like so liberating to be able to say, we know exactly what we need to accomplish this year and blocked out everybody's schedules so that they know when all of those activities are going to happen. And the goals for the end of this year are broken down by what do we need to accomplish every month? What do we need to accomplish every week? And what does every individual need to accomplish every day in order to stay on track? It was so fun to do.
What I loved, you called it fun, which, it's fun when you're executing in business. I couldn't agree with you more. And you gotta like what you're doing. I think that's really, really important. You mentioned a couple things, up and visual, right? If you don't have a goal, or then you don't know where you're going. We talked about the gaps with implementation at our team, and this is the same thing you're talking about. I'm going to give you the 7 gaps that we identified. I think this is pretty interesting. Let me pull this up here. So where are we? Hold on. So I'll find this in a second. But the first gap is that you don't have a target and you don't know where you're going. That's number one. The second gap, here we go. And this was a 5 a.m. call I did. People are shocked we still do the 5 a.m. call. This is like, oh, you still do that? And I'm like, this is a commitment. It's a discipline, which is part of implementation. So let me mute that. I got my follow-up boss number ringing. So lack of clear vision and goals, fear of failure, overwhelm and complexity versus manageable tasks. So that's exactly what Lisa's talking about by breaking down numbers. Inadequate resources and support, another really important one. Poor time management and prioritization. So Lisa's already got her people's calendars rocking and rolling. That's usually what happens. You ever see the person's like, oh, my calendar's time blocked, and it looks like this beautiful schedule, and then they never follow it, and they don't put their appointments in or do anything else, right? That's a big gap. And then last, resistance to change and lack of accountability. And what I would argue is that if you're in the right environment, you're actually going to have some of those taken care of for you. And what I mean by that is the right environment will help you stay accountable. The right environment will give you the right resources and support. And that could be an accountability partner, right? That could be having a coach. That could be having a really good assistant. If you're a single agent, there's a lot of different ways that works. And so those 3 you can kind of eliminate right away, and maybe 4 if you have someone that does business planning with you. So then what you really got to worry about it yourself as an agent is fear of failure. So many people are nervous about this, and it like paralyzes them. It's because they don't practice, right? So I would understand where you're fearful of, and just rep it out so it becomes less fearful, right? The David Goggins approach. If you're afraid of something, just keep doing it until you're not afraid of it anymore. And poor time management and prioritization. What did you say? Income producing activities and the numbers that are going to make sense. It's that simple. You just got to know what's going to move your business. We talked about the social media posts versus the follow-up calls. The latter is the one that's going to help you. And resistance to change, I think you do got to be coachable and be open-minded to what's working. So everything Lisa said there, I would rewind the podcast and write that down. So that's how to do it. And then you just got to show up every day and like, this is my objective. My objective is not negotiating this home inspection. My objective is not sending out this beautiful social media post that I'm going to do. My objective is X, Y, and Z, and that's all part of that. That's something that supports the objectives.
Totally. And the fear of failure, I think the one thing that I always tell agents is if you take a risk on yourself and you understand that the risk that you're taking on yourself is taking away something from somebody else, from your family, right? I remember when I first started buying Zillow leads way back in 2015, it was $500 a month. And I knew that I was taking that $500 away from my family's budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that I committed to was that if I took that risk on myself, I was going to work myself to death to ensure that I didn't waste that opportunity and that I didn't take it away from my family for a reason. Failure wasn't an option. And I think that that's the kicker. Mindset makes such a difference in that.
Mm-hmm.
If you truly believe that failure isn't an option, you're 10 times more likely to actually accomplish the goal. But if you're worried that you could fail and thinking that failure is an option and that it's a potential outcome, I think you're almost guaranteed to fail.
Bingo, right? So that's like a t-shirt, Lisa. Just put that on a t-shirt, give it out at the 𝐤𝐚𝐢𝐤 team retreat. The other thing, I actually got that advice from my first boss that I had at Rita's Water Ice. He's since become a client. I've helped him with a bunch of stuff. I remember when I was getting started in real estate, I was still in college, and he goes, hey, you know what, Tom, it's going to work out because you don't have a backup plan. This is it. Like, there's no other option. And, when you have the backup plan, when things get hard, you know what happens? You immediately default to the backup plan. And so I think that's really great advice there. And, part of having these plans and goals, you got to have them up in visual. But you also got to tell people about them, right? I'm sure Steve 𝐤𝐚𝐢𝐤 knows exactly what Lisa 𝐤𝐚𝐢𝐤's business plan is, right? My wife knows exactly what our business plan is. I started telling my kids. I don't know if you've done that yet. And especially my son, because he'll be like, what are you doing today? And I'm like, I got to hit these numbers and I'm ready to hang out. And this is like on a Saturday because Lisa and I make phone calls over the weekend, believe it or not. I mean, we do this, I would say, on the reg. And when you have those conversations with people that matter in your life, it goes a long way because then they become your cheerleaders and your support system instead of the other way around.
Correct. Yep. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I feel like we should do like a Knowledge Brokers business planning session outside of the normal pod here. I think that'll be really helpful for a lot of people as we get into the fourth quarter. Because this is like, if you don't have your business plan done now, you better get it done in October because the new year is coming fast and furious.
Maybe we make it a learning session for
webinar or something like that. Yeah. We'll see if the Lord approves, Lord Byron, if he'll give us his blessing to do a business planning session here. So that's fun. All we got this week, Lisa. I think we covered it all. Anything you want to add here?
That was a good week. No, I think it was a good week. Lots of good info and hopefully some good actions for everybody to kind of implement before the weekend.
There's a lot of positive stuff to talk about in real estate right now. It won't work if you don't pick up the phone and have conversations with people. Just imagine what would happen if you started conversations every day and knew what you were talking about. Just think about it. Just imagine. And we'll leave it there. Great stuff, Lisa. See you next week.
On August 17th, the rules of the game changed. You know that. And now there is more opportunity than ever for the best agents to capture market share. Talking about the agents who are true knowledge brokers, expert advisors to their clients, and masters of the craft. You're one of those agents. That's why you're here. Or if you want to be one of those agents, one thing you need to do right now is invest in your client experience. We all have CRMs, but CRMs are designed to nurture and convert leads. You can't treat your clients like leads. That's one of the biggest reasons agents lose referrals and repeat business. What you need is a CEP, a client experience platform, to give your clients the best digital experience possible. The CEP my team and I use is Mosaic. Mosaic kicks in when a lead becomes a client, providing a seamless experience from search to closing, transaction management to long-term client retention. It gives you all of the tools you need to impress your clients and showcase your value, helping you generate more referrals, repeat business, and client loyalty. Mosaic is a huge competitive advantage for agents, but spots are limited in each market, and some are already full. Head to mosaic.io or click the link in the description to see if there's any available. Head to mosaic.io, or click the link in the description to see if there's any availability in your market. Don't miss your chance to build a lasting edge over the competition. At BAMX, we listen to what real estate professionals want and need. That's why our platform is filled with sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business. And that's why we launched BAMX in a box with templates and scripts done for you, delivered each Friday. The best part? It's not coming from panel pontificators who bought their followers and don't sell any real estate. It's coming from top agents, team leaders, and content creators in the industry. It's education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. And now it includes editable templates and scripts so you can easily deliver that knowledge to your database. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX, into our private Facebook community, content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. Do not wait any longer. Use code KNOWLEDGEBROKERS and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Use Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX.